Hey, Steve Mignani here, and you're watching and hearing the Steve Maggs Muscle Car Show podcast. And this is episode number 63. And if you didn't know, what each episode is basically I read from my 2013 book, Steve Mignani's 1001 Muscle Car Facts. And you can find this book online, Amazon, and occasionally at Barnes & Noble. There's a few of those still left in the country. But again, I wrote this book in 2013, and essentially I cover Chevrolet, Pontiac, Olds, Ford, Mercury, Dodge, Plymouth, Chrysler, and now we're getting into American Motors. Each of the great muscle car manufacturers through the ages, they each get their moment in the sun. And each of the chapters on these various makes of muscle cars is broken down into sub-chapters to add to the interest. And those sub-chapters are legend and lore, body and interior, engine and driveline, suspension and brakes, and then number crunching and press commentary, what the magazine said about the cars when they were new. So anyway, we just did show 62, which was legend and lore in the world of the AMC muscle car. And now we're going to go into body and interior. This again is episode number 63, and I want to thank my sponsors here at High Octane Classics in Auburn, Massachusetts. In fact, they're located at 143 Washington Street in Auburn, Mass. And I'm sitting next to this 2018 Dodge Demon, which it's hard to imagine. This is a 4-year-old car, but this is the car to me that really just reset the clock. The Hemi Cuda, the Ram Air 4 GTO, the GT 500 Mustang of 1967, dual quads, 428. The Demon really, kind of makes all those things kind of quaint. Now, they're very important cars. But with that said, if you want to buy either a classic or a modern like this, High Octane Classic, has them both here in Auburn, Massachusetts. So to learn more about High Octane Classics, you can check them out at the High Octane Classics website.com or at 508-859-4515. Give them a call and check out the inventory, maybe buy a car. But in the meantime, let's now begin body and interior, American Motors style, on my book, Steve Mignani's 1001 Muscle Car Facts. Here we go. Fact 871, short but sweet. When AMC restyled the Javelin in 1971, it retained the rear bumper used on the 68 through 70 Javelin and AMX to save cost. When viewing the entire car, the shared bumper is rarely noticed. It is funny that the 71 through 74 Javelin with its sort of Coke bottle Corvette inspired fender humps looks radically different, but the reality is the A-pillars, a lot of the underpinnings and stuff are the same as the 1968 through 70 Javelin and AMX, including the rear bumper. Okay, more of that second gen Javelin trivia with fact 872. A subtle change made to the 1973 Javelin body was the elimination of the simulated T-tops pressed into the roof panels of 1971 and 72 models. Though never offered, a Corvette-style T-top roof would have been a nice way to appease Javelin shoppers looking for open-air motoring, in other words, a convertible Javelin. Javelin and AMX was never offered as a convertible. However, each of its pony car competitors, except for the Mercury Cougar, listed a ragtop on the menu. Now here's a picture right here. You can see there on that top image right there, that sort of body-colored line going down between the two vinyl sides. On a painted body, that was actually formed into the metal. So when it was done in vinyl, it was harmonized. But again, the early Javelin, 71 and 72, there's actually a raised rib in the middle of the roof structure that's there, whether it's a painted car or a vinyl car or whatever. It was gone in 73 and 74. So little changes like that are a big part of the picture in any car. The devil is in the details, and so is salvation, as they say. Okay, let's move on. More Javelin history with the Mark Donohue Signature Series with fact 873. The 1970 Mark Donohue Signature Edition Javelin was released to homologate not only the 4-bolt V8 engine block, but also the trunk-mounted fiberglass ducktail spoiler. The spoiler was designed by Donohue and Roger Penske at the Plymouth Road Design Studios in Detroit and executed in clay by AMC employees Keith Goodnow and Len Kroski. Though rarely seen on 1970 Javelins, an identical spoiler became standard equipment on every 1971 through 74 AMX. All 67 through 74 Javelins and AMXs share the same trunk lid, so swapping the ducktail unit onto non-spoiler cars is easy. A couple things here. I mentioned Plymouth Road. Plymouth Roadrunner or Plymouth division of Chrysler Corporation. No, Plymouth Road is a location in Detroit where American Motors had its design studio. Now, the factories for building cars were largely in Kenosha, Wisconsin, but again, Detroit, Wisconsin were pretty close to each other. But Plymouth Road in Detroit is where big styling decisions were made by American Motors stylists, including that trunk spoiler. Speaking of which, here's a picture of it right here on that Mark Donohue edition Javelin right there. People listening to the podcast, just try to imagine what this is. If you can't, well, Google trunk spoiler. But it is another fact, like the rear bumper, the deck lid was shared on all 68 through 74 AMXs, Javelins, etc. Yeah, kind of weird, but you don't notice until it's pointed out. But the deck lids are the same. Okay, more Roger Penske stuff with fact 874. Before the 1970 arrival of the race-proven Donohue-Penske ducktail, AMC stylists sought to reduce lift with a novel roof-mounted spoiler, a simple streamlined fiberglass airfoil affixed above the backlight with 4 bolts. Testing performed in the June 1969 issue of Car Life magazine failed to show any effect whatsoever below speeds of 115 miles per hour. They didn't test any higher. Spoiler swappers hoping to add the Javelin's sleek body-colored wing to 1968 through 72 seat AMXs are frustrated to learn the unit is not interchangeable. The AMX has different surface contours to prohibit that swap. But it is true, before the ducktail spoiler came along, there was a roof-mounted spoiler, which is something that was not seen on any other muscle car. At the very end of the roof was a duct that was added on, and in fact, a spoiler exerts down force as it counters the effect of air passage, and it can be on the roof or the deck lid, doesn't really matter. But it was only AMC that explored a roof-mounted spoiler. Interesting little fact right there. And again, that was fact number 874. Or 873. Okay, let's move on to 875, more AMX information. The 1968 AMX shared numerous body panels with the Javelin, including doors, front fenders, front and rear bumpers, taillights, headlight surrounds, back glass, and trunk lid, as we mentioned. Items exclusive to the AMX included the quarter panels, side glass, roof panel, grille, and hood skin. By all accounts, Dick Teague's styling staff did a great job of giving each car, the Javelin and the AMX, a distinctive look despite the high number of shared components. We got to remember that the big three, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, were the big three. And of course, there was a little fourth, American Motors, also known as an independent car maker because it was truly independent, kind of on its own out there in Kenosha, Wisconsin. But they did a lot with a little, including the Javelin, by sharing a lot of the parts that otherwise would cost a lot of money and maybe break the bank if they made them unique to the car. So again, they did a great job of sort of cheating the eye and making 1 + 1 = 3. Okay, speaking of numbers, let's move on to fact 876. Nice segue there, right? Okay, 876, body-colored bumpers. Body-colored bumpers were a major styling trend in the late 1960s and could be found on muscle and pony cars such as the GTO, Firebird, Camaro, Cuda, and Challenger. But while competing car makers utilized urethane-coated steel bumpers with hidden fasteners, American Motors' limited budget forced a more basic approach. Introduced in 1969, Javelins and AMXs ordered in Big Bad Orange, paint code 3A, Big Bad Green, paint code 4A, or Big Bad Blue, paint code 2A, came with a standard steel bumper pressing that was simply painted body color. Specially formulated paints resisted flaking, but it was a far cry from the rubber-like surface textures used by the competition. To emphasize the grille opening, a thin strip of bright aluminum molding was added to the Big Bad front bumpers. This bit of trim is extremely rare today. In fact, here's a picture right here. This is a shot of about a 69 or so Big Bad colored Javelin, but or the AMX. Notice how the rear bumper is not chrome. It actually blends with the body. Well, that's an example of the painted steel bumper. By contrast, if you look at a GTO or a Cuda or any of these cars with the elastomeric bumper option, it was actually a thick rubber coating that was bonded to a steel structure underneath. The fasteners were hidden behind the skin. And so AMX, or AMC, I should say, again, try to do a lot with a little. And the good news is if you're restoring one of these cars, you don't have to go and find a rare rubber molded bumper. You just use a regular one and paint it. But again, use the right paint formula so the paint will adhere to the metal of the bumper. The unknown is whether or not those bumpers were chromed and then painted by American Motors, or were they not chromed, just a bare steel stamping so the paint would stick better. Don't know. I would love to find one of these cars, scrape the paint off and find out, but I'm sure at the car show I'd probably get kicked in the nose by the owner for stripping the paint off his bumper. Anyway, if you find out, send me an email at hemimagneto@AOL and let me know if there's chrome or bare metal under a factory big bad body colored bumper. Boy, that's a mouthful. All right, more big bad stuff with fact 877. The big bad body color option continued for the 1970 model year, but AMC dropped the painted bumpers and reverted to the standard chrome guards used on regular models. Any engine transmission combination could be had with the big bad color package, though most were high performance units with the 343, 360, or 390 power plants. By 1971, the visual narcotics were eliminated from the option sheet. Dick Teague lobbied for the inclusion of Big Bad Yellow in 1969, but it didn't make the cut. Nonetheless, Teague had his personal AMX3 sports car painted that shade, Big Bad Yellow. So again, we have it where 1969, the only year correctly that you'll find any AMX or Javelin with body colored bumpers. Let's move along now. More Javelin stuff with fact 878. After the 1971 Javelin body restyle, the only way to get the Mark Donohue-inspired trunk spoiler was to buy an AMX. Lesser Javelins may do with the standard flat trunk panel. The lone exception, aside from post-retail over-the-counter installations, was the fleet of 401 Javelins built for the Alabama State Police. We talked about those in show 62. Surprisingly, the goal wasn't enhanced aerodynamics, but rather the large ducktail surface area was an ideal location for state trooper markings. So again, if you come up behind a state trooper Alabama Javelin, the back has a big billboard, the side of the bumper, the spoiler that says State Police, Alabama. Not something you're going to find on a lesser Javelin. Love that squeaky door. But we're actually here at High Octane Classics, which is a fully working, functioning, running specialty car dealership. And last thing I'm going to do is tell them to stop selling cars. So if you want to buy a car, a classic, or come look at them, give them a call at 508-859-4515. Okay, let's move along. Fact number 880, though dealers and retail buyers alike pleaded for it, the 1968 through 70 Javelins and AMXs built with 4-speed transmissions were never offered with consoles surrounding the shift handle, which was a popular Mustang and Camaro feature. Buyers had to wait until 1971 when an extra $58 finally put a sleek console between the buckets. Automatic equipped cars were offered with a console. It's kind of weird. If you go back to, again, any pre-1971 Javelin or AMX, if there's a stick shift, you're going to see the rubber boot, the chrome ring, and the stick. There's no console until, again, 1971 when they redesigned the Javelin, and you could finally get a console down the middle between the buckets. Interesting little detail. All right, let's move along to fact 881. And again, this is the body and interior subsection of American Motors, which is why we're talking bodies and interiors and their various details. Next up, I think, will be engine and suspension, or engine and driveline, but that's show number 64 in a little while. Okay, fact 881. A new low gloss black paint treatment called Shadow Mask arrived for 1970 Javelins and AMXs. Applied to the tops of the hood and front fenders and then around the side windows, the $52 effect was first seen on the 1968 AMX GT show car, a non-running pushmobile combining an AMX nose with what later became the 1970 Gremlins camback. The shadow mask treatment was applied to 982 of the 4,116 1970 AMXs built, along with some late production Rebel machines. And though attractive, it was highly prone to stains. AMC applied shadow mask paint to the body prior to engine installation, and it covered the entire engine bay. A correctly restored shadow mask car must not have a body-colored engine bay. It is true that if you look at like the Roadrunner, I think it was, I forget what it was, but there was sort of a blacked out fender top and hood treatment. And again, American Motors played that game too, but only 982 cars were made that way. The problem is on the assembly line, When the cars go through the paint booth, there's an extra step, actually several extra steps involving masking and spraying to apply that blacked out effect on top of the fenders and cowl and engine compartment. And that kind of stuff, frankly, throws a big wrench into the works of any mass production assembly line. So again, those shadow mask orders, the assembly guys probably said, oh no, not another one, when they came through, because again, the masking was kind of a nuisance and a break from procedure. And on an assembly line, when you're doing the same thing over and over and over for your 8-hour shift, anything that throws that into a tizzy is a problem. And I got to say, the quality control on most of those shadow mask cars, if you find an original one, you'll see grainy overspray, thin paint here and there, kind of fuzzy edges and stuff. Again, they were mass-produced cars. When they're restored, that's where we make them perfect. But anyway, shadow mask paint, pretty rare stuff. And $52 well spent. It really adds an element of sinister vibe to any Javelin. Okay, fact 882, let's talk about the GoPak. Spotting a 1968 or 69 GoPak Javelin or AMX was made easy due to the inclusion of twin racing stripes applied over the top of the car, which could be deleted upon request. The GoPak added heavy-duty suspension, a twin grip differential, posi, power disc brakes, extra duty cooling with a 7-blade fan, and E70x14 redline tires. Unfortunately, there is nothing on the door tag or VIN plate that verifies the presence of GoPak equipment. That's all found on paper documents such as the window sticker, dealer order form, and build sheet. The GoPak was not available on any 6-cylinder Javelin, 304 Javelin, or 290 AMX in the 1968 through 70 period. And again, when you see these stripes going over the roof of the car and down the trunk and on the hood on a Javelin or an AMX, that's a GoPak car. And at the very least, you know it has a twin grip or posi, so you don't have the one-wheel peel when the guy punches the gas. And again, you'll never find the GoPak on a 6-cylinder or a 304 or a 290 low-performance package car. It would be counterintuitive and counterproductive. Okay, let's get into a transmission interest or interior elements with fact 883. 1968 was the only year for antiquated column-shifted 3-speed manual transmission controls on first-generation 6-cylinder base Javelins. The shift handle was sportingly relocated to the floor between the seats in 1969 and 70. However, Grandpa's 3 on the tree returned inside the restyled 71 Javelin, but only on cars equipped with the base 232 inline 6. All others featured floor-mounted manual shift levers, including the optional 258 inline 6 and all V8s. Yeah, kind of weird. The old days of the 3 on the tree. The trouble with those is while they're convenient and get the shifter away from the floor where you can get 3 people in there and they're not in your legs, trouble is when you're shifting from first to second, you have to go up and it's kind of a problem. If you're drag racing, it's a good way to lose a race. So the 3-speed on the column, 68 only, but only on low-performance cars. 390s and stuff, never 3-speed manual equipped, always 4-speeds or automatics. Okay, let's move along. Some more transmission goodies here with fact 884. The 1969 SC Rambler or Scrambler, you choose, was only produced as a 2-door hardtop model, and that was model 6909 on the trim tag. There were no pillar coupes, which were model 6906 produced, and certainly no convertibles ever on the SC Rambler. All legitimate SC Ramblers or Scramblers, again, you choose, carry transmission code M for the 4-speed floor-shifted manual in the VIN's 3rd position, and engine code X for the 394 barrel in the 7th place of the VIN. That said, there was a convertible built. In fact, here's a picture of one right here. But the question is, who built it? Not American Motors. This was done by a fan who really enjoyed the car, and this is a guy who put this together for the AMC Nationals. I photographed this car back in, 1999 or something like that. Anyway, cool car, but never happened from the factory. That's where the VIN and the data plate numbers come in really handy. Okay, fact 885, more SC Rambler data, body and paint. Okay, the SC Rambler or Scrambler was sold in 2 paint schemes. The first 500 were painted white with bold red side panels and a blue central racing stripe. These are known as the A paint scheme cars. A second production run of 512 were painted white with more subtle blue and red graphics on the lower door and rocker lines. These are referred to as the B paint scheme cars. As a final hurrah, a third run of 500 A-paint scheme cars with the brighter red, white, and blue were built, bringing the total of SC Ramblers of 1969 to 1,512 units. All were fitted with a standard fiberglass hood scoop, the first factory-installed external cold air induction system in AMC history. Now, we all know the SC Rambler or the Scrambler. That was the car that American Motors advertised in their full-page ads as being capable of going 0 to 60 in running the quarter mile in 14.3 seconds. And it was a radical departure from the early 60s, 1964, when General Motors' George Romney, president, said the only race American Motors cares about is the human race. So 5 years later, by 1969, AMC had joined the youth car movement, and they were actually advertising quarter mile times in full-page magazine ads, how quickly they changed. And of course, the profits went way up. Okay, fact 886, let's go with this one. And again, this is about the AMX. To cut costs, the 1970 AMX lost its exclusive fender and rear quarter panel extensions for revised parts that were shared with the Javelin. The money saved allowed for an exciting new domed metal hood, which was also optional on the Javelin, which was the only functional if the GoPak equipment was ordered. Not counting the quasi-streetable fleet of 53 Hurst-modified 1969 Superstock AMXs, this marked the first application of ram air for the Javelin and AMX. That's right, 68 and 69 AMXs have a special hood with sort of twin canted raised power bulges. They don't do anything. They look cool. They even have pressed-in louvers that, again, are blocked. They don't do a darn thing. It's a one-piece structure. But those hoods today, I don't think are being reproduced. Like Auto Metal Direct, they do Camaro and Mustang parts. They don't do AMC stuff. That's how to lose money. With that said, if you have a 68 or a 69 AMX hood, that's a rare, rare piece. But again, by 1970, there was the optional domed hood, the GoPak stuff, and that hood was functional. Again, the first time that American Motors had a working hood scoop on a mass-produced car. And again, we're not talking about the 69 Hurst cars, of which is the subject of fact 887. Each of the 53 built Hurst-modified 1969 Superstock AMXs was originally painted frost white and was specially constructed without a heater, radio, sound deadener, rocker panel trim, or dual horns. The sticker price was $5,994, almost $2,300 more than a loaded AMX. The extra coin helped pay for the fully race prep 390, but AMC still took a loss on each unit. If you wonder what they look like, here's one right here. Red, white, and blue, and they generally, again, they were sold in white, but the red, white, and blue scheme was almost always applied to them. And that hood scoop that's seen on that fiberglass thing right there, that was always open, always functional. And again, these cars were built to homologate the AMX for Superstock, I think, D drag racing. But again, sort of like the Hurst Hemi Darts of 68, Hurst was the one who did final assembly on these cars for American Motors. Okay, let's move along. More AMX stuff. Fact 888. With its abbreviated trunk compartment, each 1968 through 70 AMX was shipped with a standard BF Goodrich Space Saver collapsible spare tire. Javelin buyers wanting a little extra cargo capacity could also opt for the Inflate on Demand spare tire, but for an extra $20.80. These mini spare tires were mounted on steel wheels that were painted orange to discourage prolonged use. Again, mini spares today, cars don't even have spare tires anymore because we have a thing called the run flat tire. But early on, of course, vehicles came with 5 tires, the spare being something you'd install when you got a flat tire on the side of the road. Well, the mini spare arrived around 1969-70, and essentially it was a standard rim, but with a weird, very short tire that you inflated with a compressed air canister that came with it. When you inflated it, it kind of looked like it was like a tire, but it was thinner, and they generally were only limited to 50 miles per hour. And again, those things were used through the 70s and into the 80s. But again, they add weight to a car. That's why the spare tire has been eliminated for the most part on modern vehicles, with the exception of trucks and SUVs. But anyway, that's the story there. Orange wheel made them stand out so that you wouldn't use it on a day-to-day basis. So that was the story there. But again, AMXs came standard with the small spare because the trunk was so small. All right, let's go here. Fact 889. Let's talk gas pedals. AMC changed the gas pedal design from a floor-hinged mount to a suspended pivot on all 1969 models. The driver got better modulation or pedal feel, but the greater benefit for hot rodders was on the other side of the firewall. The previous mechanical carburetor linkage gave way to a simple push-pull cable, which simplified carburetor and intake manifold swaps. So it's true, if you look at a pre-1970 car, you will see that the pedal hinges from the floor rather than being suspended onto the dash. You'll also see that on GTOs. In 1966, I think it was, the year they went to a suspended pedal. And again, the beauty of that is the cable actuation for the carburetor. So instead of the rods and bell cranks and linkages and stuff like that, a cable is much easier to adapt to an Edelbrock aftermarket intake, a Hawley, that kind of stuff, or adding a 4-barrel in place of a 2-barrel. Cables are way easier to work with, but that's the fact there. Okay, let's move on to fact 890, and this will be the final fact in the body and interior section, but here it is, fact 890. AMC's first mass utilization of fiberglass body panels came with the bulged cowl induction hood featured on 1971 through 74 AMXs. The same compression molded fiberglass outer skin was offered in functional and non-functional modes with the shared steel underbrace. Functional cowl induction hoods included a triangular metal insert with a round opening to feed the top of the air cleaner housing and a metal mesh screen to prevent debris entry. Non-functional variants of this AMX fiberglass hood were blocked. Cowl induction was offered with the 360 and 401 through 1973, but was terminated for the 1974 model year. None of them had functional cowl induction. With cancellation of the Javelin AMX looming for 1975, supplies of fiberglass hoods ran out and were not replenished. As a result, some late build 1974 AMXs were delivered to customers with a standard flat steel Javelin hood. All but a handful of the 15,470 1971 through 74 AMX hoods were made of fiberglass. In retrospect, AMC might have saved money had it tooled the AMX hood in steel versus resorting to labor-intensive fiberglass construction. It is true, steel costs money up front to stamp. A stamping device for a steel hood weighs 80 tons. It's a heavy thing, can't be bouncing around, so they're big, and the dies are expensive. But beyond that, when you're going to build as many as 15,470 of these things, that's a lot of hand labor to mold and create those skins and bond them to the steel understructure. So again, if AMC had a crystal ball, they might have invested in a domed hood in steel versus letting them be made in fiberglass. But past tense is past tense. Well, that's the end of the body and interior subchapter of American Motors. We'll pick it up in the next show with engine and driveline, where things get really exciting. We talk about aluminum blocks, aluminum heads, prototype stuff, and lots of good production stuff, ram air pieces. And that'll be episode number 64 coming up, next. But until then, I want to thank our sponsors here at High Octane Classics at 143 Washington Street in Auburn, Massachusetts. I'm sitting here with one of their cars right here, the 2018 Demon. This is the 9.9 second factory stormer that came out 4 years ago. There were 3,300 of these things, and there's more demand than supply on these cars, but High Octane Classics has one. It's right here. It's an automatic car, as they all were. This one has the back seat, the Harman Kardon stereo system, but it's a Demon. This puppy will lift the tires, and it does have the Demon crate right behind me. Comes with this car. So if you want to learn more about this car or anything at all here at High Octane Classics, give them a call at 508-859-4515. So until next time, the Steve Maggs Muscle Car Show podcast, I'll be back. Thanks for listening.